Some would say that you can do too much planning. Others might offer that you can never do enough planning. What do you think? We're going to have that conversation today as we talk about planning. Can you do too much and more on episode 711 of today's Antidote? Give it a thought and let us know what you think. We'll have that discussion in just a minute.
Stay tuned for today's Antidote, brought to you by the Renegade Success Network. Today's Antidote features a healthy dose of thought-provoking insights and information for business owners, entrepreneurs, leaders, and nonprofit professionals. Each day since March of 2020, this program has offered that one thing to help you continue on your own unique pathway to success. And now, Renegades, we bring you Bob Graham and Tom Brush.
Good morning, Tom. How are you?
I am doing well, thanks. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I think my internet might be a little slow after all the rain last night.
Yeah, the snow is going north of us.
I saw snow yesterday.
Oh, yeah?
Yep, just a couple of flakes and then some sleet and a little bit of hail.
Yes.
And then I went to get my hair cut, and someone in there said, I think they're probably going to close schools. And I tried to contain my laughter because it was like that, and they were dead serious, and it was also at about 2:15. So at that point, not really a need to close schools, but that person was very, very insistent that needed to be done.
Well, that's what was real for them. So good
Maryland
for them.
weather.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. All right, everyone. Good morning and welcome to today's Antidote, our daily broadcast and podcast, where each weekday morning, Bob and I have a discussion around a topic. We have a topic for the week, and then each day we have a subtopic. Then we dive a little bit deeper into the overall topic. This week, as I mentioned, we're talking about planning. Today, we're going to discuss too much. Can you do it? Is it possible, or is it necessary? So we'll have that conversation in just a little bit. And as we go through it, if you have thoughts or ideas that you'd like to share, please feel free to share them in the comments of whatever social media you happen to be following us, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, or
LinkedIn Live, baby.
Or LinkedIn Live. Yes, indeed. Because we know that it'll add value to the show. And it'll probably have an impact on what Bob and I share and how we have the conversation. So we look forward to that. At the end of the conversation, Bob and I will each offer our one thing, our today's antidote. That thing that we hope will help you if you get stuck trying to figure out, are you doing too much planning? Are you not doing enough? Where are you at with all of that? And so we hope that we'll provide something that will help you figure out how to get unstuck and take your next step along your own unique pathway to success. And of course, if you have a one thing you'd like to share, please feel free to do, because that actually might be the one thing someone out there is desperately looking for and can help them move forward when they can't figure out what to do next. And before we dive into that conversation, though, each morning, Bob and I do our celebrations. Bob, what are you celebrating today?
I'm going to celebrate good health. I think it's something we often take for granted, but I was talking to a client of mine yesterday who had a discussion with one of his friends who's going to come work with him, and that was Friday afternoon. They were talking about working together this week, and Friday evening, that person was in the hospital with a serious heart issue.
Wow.
And so all those plans were dashed very quickly. And it occurred to me as my client was telling me this, that, you know, we take for granted days when we're healthy, when things are going well physically and mentally for us. And so I just want to take a moment and be really appreciative and thankful for the good health that I have today that allows me to do fun things like this.
Nice. I like it.
How about
And
you?
I'm sorry.
How about you? Is it that garbled?
A little bit, not too bad. I'm going to celebrate reconnections. So last week, somebody reached out to me that I had known fairly well. We had done a lot of involvement with an organization that I was involved with called CASE. And they were just, hey, do you have a few minutes to connect and re-engage? And so yesterday we hopped on a Zoom call and chatted for about an hour. And it was great. We talked a little shop. He's in a new role. a role that I had at another institution previously. And so we just had some conversations about some of the challenges that he's going through and thoughts and ideas that are going on. And it was just nice to have that conversation. He's a really good guy. And it was fun to talk some shop and also talk a little bit about what's going on in our lives. So it's always great to reconnect with some people that you haven't had a conversation with in a while. So I'm going to celebrate that today.
Nice. I'm trying to figure out what the internet is doing to me, but I can't seem to figure it out. So we're going to have to go with the spotty internet. Apologies.
Okay. It happens sometimes. Must be that rain / almost snow.
Yeah. That's right. It gets you. I think I hear a snowplow off in the distance.
Yeah, it's important that we do some planning around what things might look like when the weather changes. Speaking of planning, Bob, do you have any thoughts about, can you plan too much? What are your thoughts?
This is a very interesting topic for me because I'm a over planner. And by that, I mean, I often play out every possible scenario in my head and tend to fixate on the doom and gloom scenarios, the worst case scenarios. And that can cause me to not want to take action. That can cause me to take different actions. And I think at times it can cause me to preordain the results of something without giving it a chance to play out. And I think, there's a time to whiteboard things. There's a time to plan your meetings and have an agenda. But with a meeting, as a great example, you have an agenda, but if someone walks into the meeting and says, our biggest client is talking about quitting, the right answer probably is not, hey, that's not on the agenda. We'll deal with that tomorrow or next week at our meeting because you didn't get it on our agenda in time. It's probably, hey, you know what? We have an agenda. Do you want to tackle that first and then go to the rest of the agenda? Or do you want to tackle the rest of the agenda and go to that? Too much planning, I think, makes us more rigid and less flexible. And that can cause us not to have the outcomes that we were hoping for and not to put our best skills forward. I think at times when I've over planned, it's caused me to not be able to adapt to the situation very well, whatever that situation is. And I think so much of what we do is adapting in the moment. And believe me, I believe in planning. You got to plan, but there's only so much you can do with a plan. Like I've got plans for tonight for dinner with some family members, and we've got time set. I've got a reservation at a restaurant. It could get changed for a variety of reasons. Okay. People work, people have different things going on. That could happen. So if I sit there and plan and say, well, the reservation's 6:30, how dare you be there at 6:45? I don't care that you hit traffic. You should have left work early to go to this dinner. That's not helping the situation. And I think planning is also, frankly, I think sometimes we plan too much because we realize how little control we have over the outcomes. And planning is the one thing that we can do a lot of. And we have control when we plan. When I create a scenario that Tom and I are going to talk after this about this, I have control over that in my mind. And the reality is I can't control that because you might say at the end, hey, you know what, Bob, I don't have time for you. I need to have breakfast. I've got a meeting coming up, whatever. But in my mind, when I plan, that's an opportunity for me to have control over the future. And I think we've talked about once or twice, I'm being facetious, I like control.
Well, and I guess that might be planning, too much is really trying to have complete control and thinking that you can. And so let's just keep planning and planning and planning. As you also said, it might be an opportunity to have more control over what's going on because the more planning you do, the more aware you are of other things. And I think it provides you an opportunity to see what might be coming down the pathway that you might not have otherwise seen had you not planned as much as you did. So I think that there's sort of two sides to it, is that and I guess that's a lot of what I think about with it, is it kind of depends depends on who you are and where you're trying to be and what you're trying to accomplish. And, you know, you can go to the extreme of always planning, never doing anything. I think that's, you know, one side of the extreme. The other side is you can say, well, I don't need to plan all that much. And then, you know, you take action before you're really ready to understand and consider what that action might create, and where it might put you. And so I think that it's a little bit, there's some balance in there. There's some harmony in there around, you know, what is enough and what's too much. There's probably a very fine line between those. And I think it probably depends on the person.
I think you're right. I also think that we tend to look at planning as over or under. Always, you know, how many times have you said, or someone said to you, I just didn't plan that really well? And I think we really struggle at times to know what that right amount of planning is. And if you think about it, if we're all doing something unique to us that we've never done before in our life and we're doing it our own way, planning is probably a good function, but we don't have all the information when we're planning it, right? We're learning as we go, right? So we've got to be able to adapt, and too much planning would inhibit our ability to gather the information available to us as we move down that path and discern what might be an alternative decision that could be better, might be worse, but at least there are alternatives that emerge.
Or just different.
Or different, yes. Yes.
Yeah, I think that there's, it's interesting. You know, I think back on some of the things that I've done and the amount of planning that goes into it. And in some of those instances, I would be like, I'm not sure you can do too much. Because, you know, it's interesting, like with an event, is that sometimes you really need a lot of planning to help you figure out how you're going to pull the event off the way you would hope that it might go. And at some point, the event is going to show up. Like there's a finite date, it's going to be here, and you've done whatever it is you can do. And so I think that's, and you look back at it and say, wow, I'm really glad that I did this, or I thought about this, or I considered that. Because I think that so often, as you say, there's so many uncontrolled factors that are going to have an impact on the result of whatever it is you're planning for, that it can be difficult to figure out, you know, can I try to imagine all the possible scenarios that might happen? And in all of doing that, I might forget about some other things that are really important as a part of what that thing looks like. And so you never really know what's going to be the thing that may help you get the results that you thought you might get or not.
Yeah, I mean, I think we plan this program out, what we're going to talk about, the topic of the week and all that. But here we have a morning where we planned it out and we were ready to go. And now we're having some technology issues, and we can plan for them and say, well, if we have technology issues, this is what we'll do or not do. But still, it could be a variety of things, you know, and I think that's a microcosm. I think as we get into working with teams and other people and vendors and partners, customers, the permutations of what can go outside of our plan grow exponentially. You know, think of how many things we plan and actually achieve versus how many things go astray. And it's really amazing how well we as humans can plan.
Well, I would imagine that the more experience and knowledge and perspective you have, the more you're able to plan. You know, otherwise you're going in, you know, anytime you're doing something for the first time, you don't have that. And so sometimes I think you do more planning. Sometimes you do less. You know, I think it's one of those things where you look at the situation and say, well, I only know what I know. And I've kind of done all the planning I can do around what I know. So now I'm just going to take the action. The more you've done something, I think sometimes you're like, well, this could happen, and this could happen, and this could happen. And so it almost makes us think that we should do more planning because we have more knowledge, experience, perspective around it. And sometimes that is beneficial and other times it gets us stuck. Forever planning for every scenario that could possibly happen.
Yes. I'm sorry, I lost you for a second. So I think it's time for the one thing, Tom. What's your one thing today as we talk about planning and can you plan too much?
You know what I think as I was going through this one, there was a thought that popped through my head. It made me start to question a little bit the topic.
Uh-oh.
Because I think that what ends up happening is that question in and of itself just leads to a judgment. Just leads to us saying, getting stuck thinking, well, have I done too much? Am I doing enough? Enough for whom? How much is too much? How much is not enough? And I think that thought of a question that leads us to a judgment can really get us stuck and get us trying to figure out, well, what is quote unquote right? And I don't want to be wrong. And so I think that, everything, sort of as we discussed, planning is going to be different for everyone and for every situation. And there are times when, and obviously some planning is really beneficial. And can you do too much? I guess. It's just if you look at that way. And I almost would rather say it's not about looking back, did I do too much or am I doing too much? It's looking back and saying, what might I have done differently? How could I look at this in a different way so that I might get a different result, that I don't spend too much time planning or, that I'm worried about, am I spending too much or not? Because I think that question in and of itself is just leads to a judgment. And I think anytime we get in a situation where we're judging our past actions or ideas or thoughts, that's a very quick path. That's the fast track to getting stuck.
I couldn't agree more. That is the fast track to getting stuck. And I think sometimes when we plan, we're really trying to control an outcome. And I think that's the part for me where I'm really thinking through, the best amount of planning is probably the amount of planning that accommodates scenarios that could arise, but doesn't take complete control. If that makes sense. If I'm controlling everything, then I'm not allowing the opportunity for anything to evolve, which means by what we've been talking about for the last 6 months, my control is inhibiting my ability to learn from the experience because I'm setting very rigid factors. I'm creating guardrails that are very close to both sides of the vehicle, so the vehicle can't veer at all. It's in a tunnel essentially. But sometimes when the car is veering, you realize that the suspension is wrong, that the brakes aren't working real well, that the steering wheel isn't lined up the way it should be, those types of things. Sometimes we want to narrow that guardrail so much so you can't deviate at all. And I think that's where we, instead of learning from our experiences, we end up hurting our ability to learn from experiences. And that's really the only thing we have to go forward is to learn from what we've already done.
Yeah, it's like we're trying to control everything. And when you try to control everything, one, it's not possible. And I think when you try to control everything, you get into that, well, that's not going the way I planned and I have to change it, or I must have done this incorrectly, or whatever the case might be. And again, I think it just all leads back to a judgment. What could I have done differently to maintain more control? And I think that whole thought is that everything's going to go exactly the way you planned it, that you have control over that, is sort of the fallacy that leads us down the path of frustration, being stuck, overwhelmed, and just judging what we've done.
I like it. We covered a lot of ground today.
All right. If you have one thing you'd like to share, your antidote, please feel free to put it in the comments, because we know it'll add value to what we have to say. And I think it'd be interesting to hear your take on planning, and can you do too much, and what does that lead to? So please feel free to share that. If you are listening to the podcast and are unable to share your comments, thoughts, or ideas, please feel free to join us in one of our groups. If you're a LinkedIn person or you happen to be there today, pop into our Renegade Success Network for Leaders group, and you can share your thoughts and ideas there around this topic. If you happen to be on Facebook or that's the place you hang out, just go to our Ring of Renegades Facebook group, and you can share your thoughts and ideas there, because we know that it'll add value, and someone might be desperately looking for what you have to offer. And if you're kind of stuck and you don't have any thoughts and you're not sure if you're planning too much, what does that mean for you? How does it look? Are you judging? If you go in there as well, you might find some piece of golden nugget that's going to help you figure out how to move forward when you're stuck and find the success that you truly desire. So we look forward to seeing you inside one of those groups. If not, we will see you tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. Eastern time, for our next episode of Today's Antidote. Have a good day, everyone.
Hey, embrace the renegading you. You'll thank yourself. That I can plan right now. I plan to embrace the renegade in me all day.
Really?
Yes.
Have you planned that out?
I haven't. I will.
Okay.
You'll see if I actually achieve that at the meeting later today that we have.
Well, that's not the complete day, right? There's more parts of the day after that. So
And
I may be able to find out your progress towards that.
Correct. You could.
Excellent. All right, everybody. Go out and make it a great day. We'll see you soon. Thanks for listening to Today's Antidote, powered by the Renegade Success Network. The Renegade Success Network helps you confidently create your own unique pathway to success. To learn more about the Renegade Success Network and how you can take your next step, follow us on Twitter, connect on LinkedIn, or join the Ring of Renegades Facebook group. For full details on how you can join our community, go to renegadesuccessnetwork.com. Embrace the renegade in you.